Level up your success with the ICABA World Network, where accomplished Black professionals and entrepreneurs have created a thriving global ecosystem built from valuable connections and impactful collaborations. Be a part of a trusted network that uplifts, inspires, and enhances your success. Join like-minded and leading Black professionals to foster meaningful relationships, unlock opportunities, and access the resources you need to thrive in your career, business, and life. Go to ICABAWorldNetwork.com and join today.
All right, so it's now time for us to meet our speakers. It is my pleasure to introduce to you guys Ricardo Molina. He is the Chief Executive Officer of RM Leadership Academy. He's a successful entrepreneur and transformational leader with multi-industry executive experience in operations and commercial international environments. He holds a mechanical engineering and MBA degrees in the USA and received various leadership recognition awards from GE Healthcare, as well as Johnson & Johnson corporations. Ricardo is a customer-centric leader and well-respected entrepreneur in business circles. His credentials boast a proven track record in successfully developing and leading diverse businesses, optimizing operational efficiency, and fostering the growth of inclusive and diverse organizations. Central to Ricardo's leadership approach is his role as an executive and leadership coach, guided by the law of addition, which posits that leaders add value by serving others. Ricardo's philosophy is rooted in empowerment and mentorship, and his leadership style fosters a culture of growth, collaboration, continuous improvement mindset, and mutual success. Ricardo's diverse industry expertise, combined with his commitment to service, excellence, and customer advocacy, enables him to guide teams effectively in revitalizing companies. His leadership inspires innovation and promotes excellence in an ever-changing business environment. Ricardo is passionate about cultivating a new generation of servant leaders, entrepreneurs, and high-potential individuals. His Leadership Academy is doing this through effective executive coaching programs, masterminds, and self-improvement training, building a servant leadership legacy, one customer relationship at a time. So we are excited to have Ricardo here with us, and I am going to bring Ricardo to the front. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And
give me co-host. Okay.
Yes. Well, you can share your without being co-host, so you're fine.
Got it. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
All right. Let me get myself set up here. All right. Well, thanks, Hutch, for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. Before I share a few things with you, I just wanted to tell you that tonight you're going to hear from an immigrant that came to this beautiful country when I was 17, went through some great challenges in corporate America, as well as in entrepreneurial space. I learned a few things and apply a few things. And I hope that what I shared tonight brings great value to you. Okay. With that, to grow your business with proper guidance. Several speakers have been very eloquent in speaking about mission, vision, and spent a lot of time talking about strategy. So I'm not here to talk about that, but I'm here to tell you a little bit about imperatives, which imperatives have the most essential objectives and priorities that are required to achieve the goals of your company. It's not just to achieve goals of the company, but they're important to make sure that you stay competitive and you achieve success in the industry. These imperatives are supposed to be the line of sight to us and our people and whoever and whatever our support system is, to align the execution that we ought to have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to ensure success of our imperatives. That could be related to either revenue growth, cost reduction, expansion, innovation, customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, whatever that is. What is more important is to ensure that not just us understand what they are, but everyone in the organization know what they are, so they know when they ask to do something, what we're marching against. The imperatives of the business should guide the decision making and should also guide allocation of resources. and that will create what I call an efficient alignment of a company. I'd like to share a little bit about efficient in prioritization. A lot of you guys may have seen a lot of these tools, but believe it or not, as I hear from customers, here's where most people struggle, business leaders as well as people. On the left side, we have a simple matrix that talks about the Eisenhower, which is nothing more than the urgent, the important, and not urgent, and not important. As I said to you earlier, business imperatives is where exactly we need to be working. So us as business leaders, we ought to be focused on the upper left-hand quadrant, which talks about the priorities and the most impact. Obviously, that excludes anything related to Mother Nature and things that we don't control. And the bucket right below it, which is about delegating, the not important but is still urgent, is a bucket that I consider extremely important. And that's where I believe a lot of business leaders and owners fail. Where if we don't have the skill set, if our skill set is not required, there's really no reason for anything to be delegated to either an internal staff or external staff. Oftentimes we may think, you know what, but this person that I hired may not have the skill set. Well, first, we have to make sure that when we hire people, we are hiring right. And the way I see it now, in the old days, we used to hire a lot on skill set experience. Well, the world has changed, okay? What we knew 5, 10 years ago, as you know, with the rapid pace of our market, it gets obsolete very quickly, okay? So if we hire based on skill set, we're gonna realize that those people are going to be obsolete very quickly. So I would say that almost everything is really teachable, except for values, maybe eagerness to learn, self-discipline, principles, and things like that. And that's exactly what our focus had to be. And those people in our team and that we may hire that may not have the skill set, it is really our responsibility to teach them, so therefore they can develop the skill set, and over time we can download a lot of work on them, okay? And obviously the other buckets is very clear, the stuff that is not urgent, we can schedule it, and there's a lot of things that are non-value add that should go directly to our trash bucket, our delete bucket. On the left-hand side, it's actually what I apply all the time. It's very simple. It's an 80-20 rule, which says that we got to focus 20% of our time that delivers 80% of our results. What are those results? Are those imperatives that I was highlighting earlier. So that means that every day, every week, every month, we ought to make sure that the 20% bucket of our time, our offerings, our projects, is in alignment to hit those imperatives. And the same thing with the schedule of our people. And let's make sure that we don't fall in the trajectory of staying busy and unproductive. What we're going to realize over time, as we become efficient, that we're going to have more extra time, okay? Because now we're efficient, the organization is efficient, and that's going to give us an opportunity to fully or most likely remove more often what I call our technician hat, that sometimes doesn't let us work on our business, which is the growing part of businesses, and we always try to stay too long working in the business. And I think that when we stay too long working in the business, we limit the growth of our companies. Because when we work on a business, we have the opportunity to see ahead trajectory. We are able to assess seamlessly, maybe pull teams together to work on maybe on the next project, the next program, and things like that. And when we're only working in a business, we stay in a very small circle, okay? All right, with that, next page. Then I'd like to tell you a little bit about the business flywheel. Some of you guys may have heard this. I took this from a while back from a concept on a great book that I encourage everyone to read, Good to Great, by Jim Collins. If you haven't, I would encourage you to read it. It's a phenomenal book. But the concept of the business flywheel is very simple. And this can be derived from the time that you spend on your strategies. And the idea is to be able to understand each component of driving your flywheel, that one component sets up the other one. And as it turns, it creates a cumulative effect. And the beautiful things that over time, as you understand one step for another in terms of growing your business, this creates a compound momentum. It works just like compound interest, right? Over time. What this also allows you to do, it allows you to understand what I consider more of a superior strategy that you'll be able to visualize and sustain over time. And as your business changes, it also allows you to renew those changes, to rehash those changes, so therefore you can expand your business. So you can see on the left a company that is well known, right? The Amazon. By the way, it took him a month to be able to come up with this simple thing that now is a monster, but really it's very simple, right? Lower prices, more offerings that will increase traffic of customers, that will attract third-party sellers, and therefore will allow the opportunity to expand their business and distribution channels, get more revenue at a fixed cost, and on and on and on. It looks simple, but it's not. But I think it's important that even at a smaller scale, we kind of take the time to look back and see what does a business flywheel should look like. And I think if we do that, we'll have a better understanding of how our business should flow. Now, everybody in this team should know, and I think Hachio said it earlier, that whether you are a one-person business or 1,000-person business, there is no way on earth that you're going to grow a company without a team. But not just a team. I mean a great team. Because the teams, when we cultivate teams that have high discipline, therefore you're going to achieve great performance, right? So the question that I have really for anybody in the team is, who's in your corner? Who are you talking to today? Who are you consulting? Who are you bouncing ideas? How are you maximizing the expertise around you in your network? Who's your coach? Who are you learning from? Because if you're trying to do things on your own, I will tell you with all sincerity that you're only going to move the needle so much, if anything. The second thing is about hiring to empower, but not just hiring to empower, hiring right to empower. I like to share a little story that I learned at 27 years old when I joined GE in my second year. I had this great problem, and I took a lot of time to orchestrate how I was going to share with my general manager a big problem. So I did. He had an open door policy. I knock on the door and I said, "Hey, Bob, can I share something with you?" He said, "Sure, Ricardo, coming in." So I take 5 to 7 minutes, very passionate, very eloquent, and share my problem. And at the end, I said, "Hey, Bob, what do you think I should do?" He looked at me and he says, after 30 seconds, 40 seconds, obviously, remember, this is corporate America. He says, "Ricardo, get out of my office." I looked at him and I said, "What?" "Get out of my office." As I was walking out of the office, he says, "Ricardo, let me tell you something. I want you to go back to your desk," he says. "Think about a couple of potential solutions. Come back to me, and then we'll bounce some ideas." And then he says, "General Electric hire you, Ricardo, to be able to bring solutions, not just problems." As I went back to my desk, obviously the first reaction was, what a jerk, right? But then I realized that he was so right. And I will tell you, even up until today, at 56 years old, it's probably one of the greatest lessons that I've learned. And I'll tell you why. And the reason why I'm bringing this is because if we today as business leaders, owners, or whatever, we are always the ones providing solutions every time our people come to us, we're not doing a great favor to the company nor to you. We're just loading ourselves. We got to drive an organization of solutions. So when they come to us, they basically come to consult. Okay. In terms of the environment of inclusive ideas, I've always been a believer, and I've tested it, that when you get people from your company or people that know your business into a room, at least once or twice a year, you come up with the best ideas of innovation and growth. So I'm saying if you today are not creating those rooms where people brainstorm and come up with ideas for continuous improvements of efficiency or growth, you're missing out. So I encourage you to do that, just like Google does, right? Google allocates 20% of certain people's certain functions time just to brainstorm and come up with the greatest innovative technological ideas. We can do the same at a small scale. So the idea is that we create an environment where our team is learning, sharing, growing. I always tell my team that if you go to a training course, just make sure that you take some time to highlight the top learnings, come back and share with the rest of the team. If everybody does that consistently, you could imagine the powerhouse that you create in that environment. Now, somebody said in one of the presentations, I think it was the PNC, the speaker, that exponential, he said, is our potential. Wow, what a beautiful phrase. I relate that to a culture of excellence, where we're cultivating a high-performing, high achievers that help each other, that continue to grow, they stay on the edge, customer-centric, a commodity of a team environment. And we're always trying to really grow ourselves. When we do that in alignment, when the team is adaptable, committed, and ready to deliver, it's a powerhouse. Now, I am not saying that it's easy to do, okay? But I am saying that whether it's a team of 1, 2, 10, I think that is a key concept that us as leaders need to make sure that we have in our company. I'll close with this on this page. Complacency is not an option in a high-performing environment. And the reason I bring this, because us as leaders, business owners need to be fully aware that the human tendency is to become complacent. And in some cultures, I've experienced that myself more than others. And we as business leaders are really responsible to influence, to make sure that our people continue to learn, grow, and stay what I consider cutting edge. You can do that through training programs, developing programs, all those different things that can be done. All right? Okay. Lean and growth mindset. Now, I believe these two words go hand in hand in business. You got to stay lean and you got to have a growth mindset. Even when businesses are running and humming, we need to stay conscious about the expenditures of our companies, because not every day is a rainy day. All right. I tell you that from experience. Most companies today play what I call a finite game. What's a finite game? You know, you're in a space, you're competing with another person that may be ahead of you, and you're trying to mimic. And I'm saying learn, by the way, learn from the best. But you're just trying to compete with the same thing over and over again. And when you realize over time that you may not be moving the needle as fast because you're behind, you give up, your product doesn't mature, and you end up making some decisions. But when you have a mindset, an infinite mindset game, meaning like you're always trying to figure out to bring value, a way to differentiate yourself from the competition, no matter how long it takes, what you're going to figure out over time, that customers get to see the value that you have to bring, and that becomes opportunity for growth. So our intent as we drive our businesses is to create and bring value to our clients. Now, leverage. Leverage to me is probably one of the biggest words in the business segment. And when I mean leverage everything and everyone. Now, I didn't say take advantage of people. I said leverage systems, people, the environment. Now, what I've seen that as you help people, customers, over time, people have the tendency to also want to work with you and give you opportunities. It's a give and take, right? Now, in terms of revenue streams, and this relates to growth, just like the concept says, not to put your eggs in one basket, right? I think any business needs to have a diversification of revenue streams, whether it's recurring revenue, whether it's different offerings, or is bundling of products and services, short-term, mid-term, long-term, kind of programs, whatever that is, you got to diversify. Because the reality is, just like the industries, while one product doesn't do well, the other product will. Okay? Now, in terms of measurements, a lot of people have talked about KPIs, and I think KPIs, by the way, are extremely important. What I wanted to say here is that measurements drive behavior, whether it's the right behavior or the wrong behavior. So all I'm trying to say is that KPIs are extremely important, but we just got to make sure that they're right, they're feasible, and they don't drive the wrong behavior. Okay? And last, going back to staying lean, I say staying lean all around, from our overhead to our, leveraging overseas manpower. So for those, I'm sure a lot of people already are, but the world has changed. And today we can get a lot of help in so many different areas from overseas at a fraction of the cost. It does take time, it does take development, but it does help, Leveraging free software options, for example. A lot of companies today, they want to sell you the premium, or there is the middle price, and there's the lower price, and it's the free. And depending on what level you're on your business, what I'm saying today, leverage the free while you can afford the higher price, okay? In other words, just minimize your operating costs. When I started a healthcare company 14 years ago, I started in Puerto Rico. I managed a company of sales and service internationally from my home. And I told my team that I was not planning on having an office, because sales is done in the streets, at least at the time, and service and sales is done in the streets, and administrative work can do at home. People thought that I was crazy in Puerto Rico because some cultures have this concept of going to offices. We're talking 2009 here, right? And 3 months later, they all thanked me because they realized it was nice working from home. All I'm really trying to say, the reason I survived in my initial days of entrepreneur is because I really kept my costs to a minimum. And lastly, the whole concept of proactive, reactive, all I wanted to say here is that being reactive is costly, okay? All around, whether it is from our time that we spend, if we put a price to our time, to how we launch projects. Sometimes we try to hold projects for too long, and we don't achieve what is called speed to market because we want to perfect our projects. And by the time we launch our projects, somebody is a year or two ahead of us, and then we want to react and go to see if we catch up. So there's a lot of reasons that go involved into this whole reactive mode, okay? Stop me any time, Hutch, if I'm going too slow. From a leadership efficiency standpoint, this phrase is very well known and very true, that everything in companies rises and falls on leadership. Oftentimes, leaders and managers, when things don't go as expected, they may put a fault in other areas. And yes, indeed, there are things that happen in companies with systems, with processes, but ultimately we are responsible. The interesting thing before I continue with that, and the Good to Great book, out of 1,000 companies that were evaluated, the top companies that made the grade, it wasn't how efficient they were. It wasn't how they were doing things. It was all the companies that achieved that scale were the ones that had the level 5 leaders. it was all based on values, and it was based on the level of leadership that the companies have. So it's really, really important. This will make or break your company. So all I wanted to say about this is that, I think as a leader, we have to like take a step back a little bit, humble ourselves, look at our values, examine our principles, understand our character, and really sometimes leave our egos on the side so we can humble ourselves. And once we do that, we should feel very comfortable and optimistic to lead with conviction and really truly empower our team with purpose, intentionality, and really kind of getting out of the way of our team so they can execute and show what they're all about. And our job really being influencers and amplifiers and optimize and make our team better, more efficient, more productive, and create the next leaders, create the right hands and the next leaders that can take over our jobs, and we can go on vacation peacefully and enjoy our times with our families. It's not an easy thing to do. Nothing that I'm saying here is easy, okay? But I think it's important. Now, and I tell you from experience, and I'm still a work in progress, but the one area that I think is important to really level set your leadership is to understand the balance of maintaining healthy relationships with work and health. Now, this pictorial kind of paints the picture from an stability standpoint. As a person or as a leader, if you're a one-dimensional player, you can't last. But when you have some kind of a multidimensional balance between relationships, your household, your family, your health, and your work, even when one is not stable, you can still stay. Is this an easy thing to do? Absolutely not. I still try to figure it out myself. And the only way to do that is really just being aware, being intentional, and try to make progress along the way. Now, from a sustainability standpoint, I'm getting close. I just want to say a couple of things. Having been in a healthcare environment and in a service environment in healthcare for 14 years, I can confidently tell you that I don't care how small, medium, big you are. If you can create an environment of service excellence delivered to your clients, you will become a differentiator. You will become a differentiator. What do I mean by that? From how you communicate to how orders are processed, how invoices are processed, the follow-ups, creating that customer intimacy with clients with respect to a point that clients trust you so much and value you so much, they come to you for things that you don't do. And you get into this mode saying, well, I don't do that, but let me see what I can do for you. And you become a value delivery person. So basically, clients look for you to solve their pain points. So once you get into that stage, you really have a great running business. And lastly, on this page, I think that as people would spend a lot of time in creating ideas. And I think a lot of ideas really honestly stay in the cloud and maybe even get to the strategy mode. But I really believe the business that progress, in addition to what I just shared earlier, is the ones that really consistently know how to execute. And I'm really talking massively execute. And I'm not saying you're not going to make changes along the way, pivot along the way, but you got to execute. All right. And last, I just wanted to, this is a very important area of business growth. And I wanted to highlight that, ICABA is going to be launching an initiative, and Hutch will speak more about it, but it's an initiative that's about peer-to-peer support group. And I'm pretty excited about this because it's really an opportunity to bring, maybe a manageable group of 12, maybe 15 people of diverse backgrounds with different experiences, where we can all come into a safe environment, share ideas, support, and bring the biggest challenges and collaborate with one another and grow with each other. In turn, what's going to happen is we bring our biggest challenges, we get help from people in the industry, whether they've done it or they've seen somebody done it. We can take those solutions back to our companies, okay? This knowledge, we can take it back and execute with crystal clear action plans. But even more important is to create an environment of accountability. We all can take a lot of actions from a meeting, but when we don't have an accountability partner, we sometimes tend to miss. So out of this group, what we want to do is also create an accountability group that can follow up. And therefore, at the end, obviously, we accelerate results in our company and obviously celebrate. So with that, inner strength conquers our challenges. So let's continue to focus on building our stamina so we can grow our companies and help one another. With that, thank you. I'll open it up for questions.
All right. Thank you, Ricardo. And that was, excellent. And I think that, for those, and I know there are many of you who've been here for multiple sessions, and hopefully what I'm about to say, you will agree with. And that is that we're going to walk away April 11th. I think everybody with a little bit better knowledge, relationships, and information that's going to help us and opportunities to grow our business. And today, as we were talking about the guidance, Ricardo just successfully sold his company last year and then went through the transitional phase with the company, so that when you sell your company, a lot of times they want you to stay on board to make sure that what you sold to them ends up doing and being what they believe that they bought. And so if there are any questions and how things transition, you're there to be that guide and to answer questions. And so he wrapped that up at the end of December and has launched RM Leadership Academy, which is now dedicated to helping people like us, if you will, other entrepreneurs to really grow. And that's the kind of guidance that we're delivering to you to help you with your business, because we know that we get really busy running our business, or operating in our business, but we don't always get, if you will, enough time to literally run it. And so anybody have any questions that you want to ask of Ricardo, just go ahead and unmute. I'm going to bring us back to gallery view, full screen, and we can just kind of jump right in and with any questions that you may have.
I just have a comment, not a question. Great job, Ricardo. It was very, very insightful. And to the accountability or the part of bringing groups together for solopreneurs and even for companies that are starting, it is very helpful, because sometimes one person might go through certain challenges and is able to share how it was resolved or how it turned out with other people. So that sharing the information is very important. So we don't all have to kind of go through the learning curve, but we can learn from each other. So I commend that. That's very good. And Hutch, definitely the whole series. Well, I wasn't able to be on all, unfortunately, but the ones I was on, extremely invaluable. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the peer-to-peer, and I'm going to share something and some information on LinkedIn that talks about the value of a peer-to-peer group. And let me see here.
Where you look at?
Well, here we go.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah. Was that you, Ray?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Ricardo while you were looking for that, whether or not a little bit about his background. I heard you say you were in healthcare, but I missed the very beginning of the session. Can you speak a little bit more about how you developed your skills and how you're going to apply them in your future endeavors?
Yeah. Well, I was kind of brief, but yeah, I've been in corporate about 20 years of my career between General Electric Company and 3 different institutions for them, and another 4 years in Johnson and Johnson in the with the life support products here in Florida. In the last 15 years, I've been an entrepreneur. I have a healthcare company which ended up competing with GE and Siemens and Philips, and that's what I was sharing with you, that although I was smaller than them, I ended up competing at their level because I learned how big companies run, right? Even though I was smaller. So I was able to compete at that level because of the efficiency and the optimization and the way I run the business. So I've learned a little bit. And yeah, if that answers a little bit of your questions.
Yeah, it did. It did. I was curious just to, kind of which companies you were involved in and how you got the knowledge that you've attained. Because I too have been in corporate America most of my life, but started out in my own business about 3 years ago doing franchise consulting. So, and we've met in IFAN, so I get it. But I didn't hear your background from before. So thank you for that.
No problem.
And good presentation as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anything that I can answer, by all means.
Sorry, Hutch, back to you.
Sure. No, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I was looking at the chat here. Devon asked, what is the one skill set that an emerging leader should develop first? The one skill set, is challenging enough, but he says first. But Ricardo, there's your question.
I love it. I love it.
It is a great question.
This is my opinion. I think your interpersonal skills. I really believe that if you have the ability to connect with people and become some kind of an influencer, because ultimately when we start growing, remember, we don't have salespeople, it's all us, right? So we have to really have a compelling, convincing story, and how we convey that is really important, and how we relate to people, how we connect with people is key. So there's a lot more, but to me, that's important. I don't know if that helps.
I think I think I would echo what you're saying there, because everybody needs to be able to sell in their business. So if you don't have interpersonal skills, no matter what your business is, and you can't sell your business, you're going to fail. So that's critical. I would agree with you there for sure.
Well, I think there's another aspect of the interpersonal skill that really comes into it, and I'm just going to piggyback and segue from your comment, as it related to sales, if you will, Ray. But I'm going to go in a little bit of an expanded or expansive way of talking about it. And so what I'm saying is that one of the most critical things that any entrepreneur has to do is to convince people to do something. Okay. You got to convince somebody to loan you money. You got to convince somebody to invest money. You got to convince somebody to come work for you. You got to convince somebody to buy from you. And I can kind of go on and on and on. You got to convince somebody what's the best way to do something is this, so on and so forth. So your interpersonal skills and your ability to communicate and your ability to be persuasive, okay, becomes really critical. And many times, in the training that I've done for salespeople, one of the things that I always lean into them about is salespeople tend to be, confident, competitive, and, really like recognition. They like to win. And they like to be recognized for winning. Okay, they don't just want to win, but they want to win and they want everybody to know it. Okay, so if you've ever met a salespeople, and I Ricardo's going like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to know, who you're dealing with, because that's salespeople. If you're dealing with, someone who may be in a different skill set, let's say somebody in accounting. They're not like salespeople. They're not necessarily as competitive. They're not necessarily looking for the recognition in the same way the salespeople are. Competency, their expertise, respect are things that are really, very important to them. Being heard, being valued. So what I'm getting at is, as Ricardo said, the interpersonal skills, which / communication is probably number one. And as Ray said, one of the key parts of that interpersonal communication skill is the ability to sell. But I'm also taking into a broader perspective in terms of the ability to persuade. You cannot, lead anybody if they don't believe in you, and you can't communicate your vision and where you're trying to take them. And the last thing I'll put to that is, people don't follow you because they think that you're great. They follow you because they think you're going somewhere that they want to go, and you're doing something that's going to help them to get to where they want to be. So if you always keep that mindset in front of mind, and that is really the servant leader mindset, that it's not about asking you, to follow me because I'm great, is asking you to follow and support what I'm doing because you are confident that I'm committed to your success. You're confident that I am trying to do something in your best interest, and that it is in your best interest to tie in and buy into the vision and support what's going on, because you're going to see yourself succeeding and getting what you want. But again, all of that is still interpersonal skills and communication. So Devin, I hope that I didn't go too far with that, but I wanted to kind of amplify, the answer that Ricardo and Ray gave, and hopefully that might be of some assistance to you as well.
That's very nice. Nicely.
Okay. Yeah, I know Devin is off camera. I did ask if, for those of you who can, turn your cameras on. It probably is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. We have this ability to talk to each other now virtually, and we don't have to drive. When it's over, we don't have to get up and go home. We're already home or in our office, and so don't have to leave to go there. And so that convenience factor sometimes creates a little bit maybe too convenient, and we kind of lean back behind the curtain, so to speak. But I think it gets a more, if you will, engaging and intimate and value-rich experience when we're on screen together, and we know that we've got folks who are engaged when we see each other. I wanted to also share some information about the peer-to-peer group. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up on my screen now. But if anyone have any other questions or comments, for Ricardo before I do, please go right ahead. I won't forget what I'm doing. All right, so here we go. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk a little bit about, and this article I found on LinkedIn about the value of a peer advisory group. And as Ricardo mentioned, he is working with me, and we're going to be adding some other people to the team. And if there's anybody here that decides that you'd like to be a part of this process, you're welcome, to volunteer. And if you're a member of ICABA, if not, join ICABA and be a part of the team. And so here they're talking about, when you're looking at in today's, fast-paced business environment, kind of what we talked about earlier, one of the ways to stay competitive and grow your business is by joining a peer advisory group. They're known sometimes as mastermind groups or CEO roundtables. But peer advisory groups and peer-to-peer networking is a little bit different, than a mastermind group, and it's a little bit different than a roundtable in the sense that, you are really working with each other and holding each other accountable and utilizing the information and the perspectives and the knowledge of the group to help individuals. So that's, kind of similar to what a roundtable or mastermind group does. And when you're part of a peer group, there is that accountability. One of the things about being the entrepreneur is that you can set a goal and objective. And if you don't meet that goal and objective, it's probably either in your head or written down somewhere, and you're the only one who sees it. So if you don't miss it, you can kind of tell yourself, oh, well, this or that happened, and so I don't need to worry about it. Or if along the way, if you see that you're not tracking or trending toward it, you can change the goal, or you can move the goalposts, as we say sometimes in the athletic area. But when you have a peer-to-peer group that you have shared your goals and your objectives with, not quite so easy. And you've got somebody saying, hey, well, I thought you said this was going to happen by, May 1, and now it's May 15th and you haven't done it. What happened? Most of us don't want to be in that position. We want to be able to meet goals and objectives that we have stated publicly, and we have people that we know are going to be holding us accountable. And that just makes us that much more focused on making sure that we get those things done. The networking opportunity in terms of the relationships, again, entrepreneurship can somewhat be a lonely endeavor, even in a group of people. I mentioned to somebody I was talking to just the other day how sometimes as the entrepreneur, you can find yourself lonely in a big group of people, because what you're doing is what's really kind of creating some of the isolation, your responsibilities, your perspective, things that you can't always share with your employees. You can't tell them, or talk to them about, things that you're challenged with in terms of inventory costs, or you can't talk about what's happening with people that you're managing and issues that you may have with a particular employee. You can't have that conversation with your other employees. And so that can also be a challenge, and you find yourself kind of going back into yourself, and that's what sometimes, creates that isolation, if you will. The professional development. Nobody knows everything. Okay, if you're a finance person, you're probably not as great in marketing. If you're a marketing person, you're probably not, as great in HR. And so all these various different people that you have your peer-to-peer group come with different skill sets, different knowledge, experiences that now you have an access to, a real wealth of knowledge and experience that can help you grow personally and professionally. It can also increase your confidence, because knowing that you've got this camaraderie and support, when you run into a problem, you know that you're not in it by yourself anymore. You know that you've got your group. And if you need to pick up the phone and call somebody, or in the next meeting, have somebody that you can talk to and share and get different perspectives about what you're going through, guys, I tell you, it can be a real game changer when it comes to that. And it's a lot more cost effective. If you hire a consultant or a coach, that can be really expensive. Generally, if you're in a peer-to-peer group, there are costs associated with it, but they are minimal compared to the costs associated with being a coach or a consultant. One of the things that we're going to talk about later on when Carl Sprague comes to join us at 7:30 is, how to make the decision when you need to be in a peer-to-peer group, or maybe being with a consulting or getting a coach, because at different times and for different situations and circumstances, one is better, than the other. It is well known. I mean, I remember seeing studies that says that every successful CEO of a major Fortune 500 company has a coach. And the people who are succeeding at the highest levels always have a coach. Think about it from, if you've ever played athletics, even maybe with your parents, there's always somebody that's encouraging you to go a little bit further than you would probably go on your own. There's always somebody who, if there's a trusted relationship, can force you to be a little bit more introspective and questioning, whether or not did I really give my best effort? Am I really doing, the priority things first? Because sometimes we do the things we like to do first, and then we get to the things that we have to do. And in business, if there's no one that you're talking to and sharing how you're going about your day, how you're managing your priorities, and listening, not only telling people what you're doing, but sometimes we really grow just by osmosis. You're in the room and you hear someone talk about a challenge or a problem or an opportunity that they were able to take advantage of, and you're listening to what they did and how they did it. and you think to yourself, oh, that's how you do it. Okay. And so that's one of the benefits of a peer-to-peer group. Those are some of the things that you get out of that experience. So I want to ask Ricardo if he'd like to chime in on any of the things I said, and anyone else who wants to comment or suggestions. But these are some of the things that we wanted to really address today in terms of helping you to know that, do not, do business alone. You need to have, whether it's a small group of people, advisors who are more technical. You got to have your lawyers, your CPAs. I tell people all the time, your financial statements are not just about doing your taxes at the end of the year. Your financial statements are a roadmap to telling you how well your business is doing, and so that you can make critical decisions intelligently that will affect your success and profitability going forward. But I'm going to stop right there and just open up the floor. Anybody, questions or comments or any input that you want to have?
Anyone, any questions about anything that I share? I know I try to pick different things, but feel free.
Well, Ricardo, one day I had a presentation, and the proverbial crickets came when I was through, when I asked for questions, and so somebody that was online said to me, well, Hutch, actually, I think you really covered everything, so we don't have anything to ask. And so I'm going to always now, whenever that happens, I'm going to assume that we've covered the topic, pretty well. But guys, this is part of the collaborative process, and so you are not here just to be passive, if you will, investor. You're investing in your success and getting better. And so you want to be active in this process, contribute, because what we hear from Ray, what we hear from Ricardo, Ken, and anyone else can really have, if you will, a positive impact. And you never know what you may say may be what somebody next to you just happened to need to hear. So I'm going to go into one other piece as it relates to the peer-to-peer group, and give another perspective here. And it talks about how to get the most out of getting into a peer-to-peer group. And this was an article from the Harvard Business Review. And so I'm going to read a couple of these paragraphs here. So 15 years ago, Mike Nowakowski, the president and CEO of EV Construction, joined a local peer support group of company leaders run by YPO, which is the Young Presidents Organization, which is a global organization for C-suite and entrepreneurs all across the world. Huge organization that I became aware of maybe about 30, 35 years ago. At the time, he doubted he would stick with YPO. He expected he'd be too busy to go to the meetings. Now he says, I can't imagine life without it. The group has helped him to connect more authentically and build trust with others. He says so much that he has encouraged his family, friends, colleagues, and suppliers to find or form their own groups. At the consultancy Spitfire Strategies, Christian Grimm, the founder and president, has introduced peer pods, self-directed virtual peer support groups in which employees with similar responsibilities and pressures discuss their professional growth, find creative solutions to problems, and ultimately learn to operate at a higher level. Now, everyone in the 50-person company, including all the senior leaders, belongs to a pod. A pod might be the first place someone says something out loud that they might otherwise hold back. In times of change, it's a real balm for people to come together. For more than a decade, Nancy Pericini, the director of the UCLA Principal Leadership Institute, has organized peer groups for leaders of Los Angeles schools in historically marginalized communities. She said it's a way to sustain valuable peer learning and ensure that educators can support one another in leading for social justice. So what exactly are these peer support groups, and what are they to do? Typically, they're made up of 4 to 10 people, and sometimes they can be more. As you heard earlier, Ricardo mentioned 12 to 15, which 15 seems to be kind of the sweet spot, if you will. And you bring people together who have similar roles. These peer-to-peer groups exist in sometimes very formal ways, and they also exist in informal ways. They are for different groups of people. They can be for entrepreneurs, as we're talking about, and they can also be for employees. I think one of the things that has struck me about a peer-to-peer group is creating that trusted environment. In really good peer support groups, what's said in the room stays in the room. And when people believe that they can trust each other and what is said in the room stays in the room, it opens up, the ability for someone to be forthcoming and to be transparent and have a sense of vulnerability with things that you may not normally say, and know that the group is going to give you, the real honest feedback and keep everything, as we say here, what goes on in the room stays, if you will, in the room. And so as it relates to, peer-to-peer groups, some of the best practices that, you create a group and you kind of stay with it. As a group gets bigger, more people want to be in it. Instead of making a group outsized, you want to start a new group. So we get, past 15, then we'll add start a new group and let that group begin to develop, its own membership and to get the bigger and grow, if you will. Also, we want to look at the people we're bringing into the group. Not everyone should be, or usually your peer-to-peer group shouldn't just be open to anybody who just wants to join. It's purposeful. We're looking for people who can not only be a part of getting something out of the group, but also what can they contribute. And so those things become, really important. Also, your commitment in terms of attending, participating, and be a part of the group. If we really want to be have a successful peer group experience, one of the things that you definitely have to do is to be active in it. This is not a kind of passive, if you will, experience. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't like sharing and engaging with people, this may be a good way to get you to begin to open up. If you're just dead set against it, then probably a peer-to-peer group is not going to be good for you, because if you're not opening up and you're not sharing and engaging, it's going to really lose the value for you pretty quick. As we talked about some of the best practices, protecting, confidentiality. There are different times, and there's a book that I've talked about in different places. Excuse me. It's called The Greatest Man Who Ever Lived. And it is about the wisdom of Solomon, and it was written by this very successful, wealthy entrepreneur named Stephen Scott. And the book relates to one of the principles that he talks about, and that is not doing business alone. And he says in the book, in a couple of different ways, how that his greatest successes have come when he invested with others and brought people along with him on his team. And his greatest failures have come when he went by himself. And he pointed out in one particular instance where they bought a company, or he bought a company with some other folks. And when they bought the company, it did not, it had a contract that was a performance-based contract. When the contract had been performed, the company that they were doing business with would not pay up, and basically said, sue us, because they were a big company and they knew that they could outlast them from a budgetary standpoint, legal standpoint, and so on and so forth. However, unbeknownst to the team at the time, one of the partners happened to be somebody who knew another person that was connected to the company that they were dealing with. And basically through a kind of a backdoor relationship, they were able to negotiate something to basically save them, a couple of $100 million on the deal that they were working on. But he outlined that as one of the things that was important, that if he had gone about this business deal by himself, he never would have had that person who had that relationship. And so many times we make decisions that are good decisions, and we found out later on they become great decisions because having made that decision, something came out of it that you couldn't even anticipate or project. And so part of having a peer-to-peer group, you never know when you may get an opportunity with a contract, and it just so happens that somebody sitting in a room with you happens to be the person that knows the person that really is going to be able to help you to close that deal or to overcome a particular challenge, that you have. So we're getting close to time and we want to take a break. Generally, we go to about 7:15.
I
And
think
Ricardo,
Denise has a question, I believe, on this.
that's you? Okay. In the chat?
In the
Yeah,
chat.
there is some things here. You
Could
can
not mute herself.
Oh, you can't unmute yourself, Denise? No. Okay. I just sent you ask you to mute because quite honestly, let me see here. I don't think let me try to. I know I can mute everybody, but I haven't been able to always. Let's see here. Oh, here I can. Yeah. Here, well, no, again, I have to ask to unmute. It won't. Yeah, I can't unmute you. You have to do that yourself. I'm so unfortunate, Denise. I'm sorry. You want to put your question in the chat?
Oh,
Yeah.
There was another question, Hutch, about when will the peer-to-peer groups be implemented?
Yeah, I think we're probably going to be looking around on the first week of May. So getting through the Jumpstart, and so one of the things I've got to do with talking with Ricardo is to come up with that timeline. But I think we should be able to get started definitely in May. Okay. So Denise, I see.
I said that's too hot to unmute, the host to unmute. Okay. Can you ask the question on text? Are you able to?
Yes.
Of course you can.
I'm assuming that she's hearing us right now. So yeah, can you put your question in the chat? Because I wish I knew how to unmute you. I most certainly would. But I can mute you, but I really don't know how to unmute. And if someone knows how, please tell me. Okay. All right. Well, here we
I
go.
don't have a question. Oh,
Oh,
okay. All right.
okay. All right. So it's 7:10. Let's take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 7:25, and our next speaker, Mr. Carl Sprague, is here. And so I'll introduce him when we get back, and we'll pick up there. So if you need to grab a quick bite to eat or whatever the calls may be, go ahead and take care of it. And we'll see you 7:25. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Carl, everything okay? Just wanted to check in, make sure if you needed anything before you're on mute.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How many sessions have you had so far?
This is number 9.
Oh, wow. Okay. How
So
goes it?
it's 15 days, 9th session, total of, I'm sorry. Yeah, 15 days is total of 33 sessions. So this is
yeah.
day. So it's actually been more sessions, but it's the 9th day. And but it's gone well. You
Good.
know? Yeah, it's gone well. And we've had good, participation. Sometimes we're always trying to get more, obviously, engagement and things, but I think that what I'm noticing is that the evening sessions tend to be a little bit more quieter than the morning sessions. Which
By the way, if there's anything I can reinforce for you and Ricardo around peer groups, as you know, I'm a big believer and been doing it for 20 years and seen companies transformed and lives changed. So, however I can reinforce the message, just let me know.
No, I really would like for you to, and as it relates to also, your background and involvement there with Vistage, a lot of people don't know Vistage, and there's a organization like Vistage that exists and what you guys, do there, and that's in a more specific note, but generally speaking, I'd love for you to be able to do that because in our community, and we had a conversation about this morning with IFAN, we just don't have a legacy of participating in peer-to-peer groups, and so a lot of times we don't even really have a kind of an experience factor to know the value of what it's all about.
Yeah.
One of the things I talked about today was that all too often when you're got business owners who are either first generation business owners, they may be doing well, or they may be, startups trying to get there, get established, but they're kind of hungry. And when you tell them, say, hey, I'll be a part of this so that you can grow your business, they say, okay, well, okay, I'm gonna be a part of it. And 30 days later, like, okay, so when am I gonna start seeing more money?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way, as you're quite, aware of. And so one of the things that we talked about today was being able to, not only from my perspective, but from everybody's perspective, to kind of help people to understand, you got to look at this as being an investment and growing your opportunities over time. And that if you're in the right place with the right people and doing the right things, it's going to do more than pay for itself over time. But you do have to give it time.
And Hutch, one of the things that I heard you reinforce to the group was, it is getting and giving value, because you will find no shortage of people who can benefit from a peer group. But do they bring anything to the table? Do they suck the energy and life out of the room, or do they contribute? Are they learners? Are they willing to be a little vulnerable and seek help? And are they willing to help others? And when you've got a dozen people with that kind of mindset, it's a powerful dynamic. People aren't wasting time. It's not for entertainment. They're there to learn and apply. And yet, oftentimes when people think about recruiting on your behalf, oh, Hutch, I've got somebody that'd be great. Well, they're great because they're clueless and failing miserably, and it's unfortunate. But when people have that kind of filter of, hey, there's someone I could really learn from. We need to bring her into our group. Or he's got a wealth of experience. I'd love to be able to tap into that. And, when that's more of the screening process, it's a cool dynamic. And it not only fills the group, but it lets people know this is not just for anybody. This is kind of selective and, by invitation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I also wanted to ask you too is that, and I was hoping to do some of this before we finish the Jumpstart, but it's just been, I think I told you earlier today, look at a little bit of a tiger by the tail here.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd like for you to sit down with Ricardo and I, and we've got a couple of other people that are coming in and out in terms of helping to structure and create, mission and so on and so forth. But your guidance in that particular area would be really, valuable to be able to share with us in terms of how
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Having said that, Hutch, having been at this for 20 years, I've made every mistake possible. So not only can I tell you what I'd recommend, but I'll tell you what definitely
but not to do. I understand.
Hey,
All
I'm
right,
gonna go get some more hot water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
with you, okay.
I'll do the same here. Cold water. Okay.
Ricardo, you want to take it first?
Sure. Okay. Well, first, and important is that you have to make sure that your financials are up to date and are accurate. Oftentimes, as companies, depending on who's doing your books, and I hope that nobody here is doing your accounting, please don't. And if you are, you need to have somebody do it. Okay. I did that for a year and it's crazy. But you got to have your books in order, because at the end of the day, companies, they're going to look at, what you're generating, how much net profit you're making, all those different things. And they're going to look at that very closely. Every company that you accept to interview, because obviously you decide ultimately who you want to talk to, they will ask you that. And that's number one. Number two, we were just talking earlier, as I had a lot of interviews with companies, we were both interviewing each other. I was looking for people that could share the vision, could protect my company, continue with my company moving forward. And in that process of building a rapport and being able to connect with one another, it really makes a big difference. Because if there is no chemistry in that interview process, even if the books look right, things can easily fall apart. It happened to me twice. I didn't like the other side, so I didn't consider it. Obviously, it's important. I don't know what kind of business you have. Can you still hear me okay? Yeah.
I can hear you, yes.
I don't know what kind of business you had, but if you have a portfolio of service contracts and all those different things that have 3, 5, 7 year sort of maturity, I mean, that's extremely meaningful, right? That's reoccurring revenue. Anything that has reoccurring revenue, any contracts that you've locked for 2 to 3 or 5 years, they value that tremendously. And yeah, I mean, I think the process, I just want to tell you that it's tedious. It's extremely time consuming, but I think it's a great experience. I'd be happy to share if you want the kind of questions that go on both sides. I think it's important to be prepared for you to get an assessment of the company that is pursuing you and vice versa. Okay. But yeah, but it's time consuming. So I think if your financials are up to date, it flows really easy. If your financials are not up to date, I'm talking your financial for the past maybe 4 to 5 years. Okay.
Right.
If that's not in place, it could be it could take a while for you to get started. Okay.
Got
we
you.
can talk more offline. Yeah.
Got you. All right. Appreciate you. Thank you.
No, there's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business, but that is something that's not transferable to somebody else. And if you leave or become incapacitated, there goes the business and you shut the doors. But I think that the idea of building transferable values, a value that someone else will pay for and someone else will want, there's a series of things that, and I will be happy to share a checklist. It's not mine. I stole it from somebody else, but I spent a dozen years as an investment banker, and I wish I had had this list during my investment banking career. It would have saved me a lot of time and energy, but it will give you some priorities to focus on. And truthfully, the idea of developing an exit strategy, if your company is saleable, it is also more financeable. If it's more saleable and financeable, there's less risk to you in owning it. And it also provides you the flexibility. If you want to take 30 days off, 6 months off, you've got things in place such that it can run itself. Doesn't happen overnight. It takes a period of time. You have to prioritize this. But this list and Hutch, tell me what's appropriate with making it available, but it's a checklist of probably 90 items. Ricardo mentioned, updated financials, but, to what extent do the relationships revolve around the owner or CEO?
Yeah.
Are processes documented? Some of those kinds of things, which in an exit, you will get additional value when those things are put in place. You'll get penalized when those are missing. But it's something that I'll be happy to make available to anyone who's interested. And then if you have specific questions about, well, how should I prioritize this? Where should I begin? Again, I'll make myself available for that discussion.
Great.
Thanks, Carl.
Sure.
So one of the questions, just to mention, Denise she owns a couple of dinner cruise boats. So she has the South Beach Lady, which seats about 350. And then she has the the princess. I know I'm missing. She'll tell you the right name for that.
We can have the meeting. We can have the meeting in the cruise. That's not a problem.
There you
I
go.
agree.
So, but that was great. I appreciate that. So I just saw Ray wants to get access to your list too. So if it's a link that you have, Carl, or something that you want to send to me that I can share.
Okay, yeah, it's a document. I'll send it to Hutch via email. And then he can blast
That'll
it
be
out.
great.
I
I
got
have
you,
one more
Marcia.
question. How do you make the decision of whether or not you're ready to exit? I mean, is there something that you say, well, I want to be done with this because I just want to retire and not have the business anymore? Or could I just transfer it to my employees? Or how do you go about making that decision? I mean, right now, I feel that I can transfer it to my employees and my children and they will be okay. There is another thing that says, well, maybe you can sell. If I sell, then there's no legacy there, there's no continuing there. And I'm kind of not quite sure what to do about this. So how do you make that decision, you know, to part with or maintain? How do you make that decision?
I'll respond. I think
Please.
the idea is to make it saleable, to put it in a position again where it's saleable, financeable, manageable, so that you have alternatives. The greatest benefit you can have is to have alternatives so that when you decide, because I've seen people that I'm going to turn it over to my kids and the kids want no part of it. And they've gone down that road, and what do they do now? Or, I'm not ready to sell. I'll, maybe 5 years from now. And then they're diagnosed with a significant health issue. They have to sell in the next 60 days and take whatever they can get. And so the idea is, and as you prepare, you'll go through those mental gymnastics of, well, what would an outside buyer, what would the pros and cons be? What would the issues be in a legacy move to turn it over to my kids or my employees? How would it be financed? What role would I have? But as you are preparing it to transfer, you go through the mental exercise, and very likely the time will come when either, okay, I'm done, I've had it, or one of those options just rises above the others that in your heart of hearts, this is the appropriate way. And I can look myself in the mirror afterwards and be proud of how I transferred it and what I accomplished.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much. That was so helpful. Appreciate you.
Well said.
Okay. So I want to jump in here and tell you a little couple of housekeeping things we're going to do. And I'm going to introduce Carl. You've already seen a bit of the value he brings with his knowledge and experience. But as I said, I want to do a couple of housekeeping things. We're going to take a couple of surveys today so we can get a little feedback from you and see how we're doing. And I'm going to execute the first one in a couple of minutes. And so we're rating your experience and how well we're doing as speakers. So we appreciate your feedback. And it really is helpful to get your feedback because it allows us to really, if you will, get better and so on and so forth. So we appreciate your participation with that. The other thing I want to do is to share with you what's coming up in terms of the next sessions. And so, we've got 6 more sessions left. And so let me go ahead and I'm going to share those with you now. And I'm going to come back to the speakers. Let me go. These are the upcoming sessions. As you can see, we have the Leadership Leading Your Way to Success with Dr. Dion Roundtree. Roundtree Training and Consulting, Ken Brown, who's actually on with us today, Ken Brown International, and Velton Shaw. And those three are going to be our speakers on Saturday, which will be from 10 to 1 at the Levan Center as well as online. Following that on next Tuesday, we're going to talk about legal safeguards for your business with Marcia and Ryan Weldon, who actually is on with us today as well. So that'll be next Tuesday from 6 to 7 here on Zoom. And we will then go to Thursday with Jackie Jimenez, CEO of Newsworthy Stories. And I haven't found too many people who have a business that you wouldn't mind getting some media coverage for. And Jackie says, getting media coverage is easier than you think. And based upon her track record that I've seen with my past 3 years of experience with her, she knows how to do it. She is a former producer and journalist, and she can really help in that particular area. And then on the 13th day for us, as we're beginning to wind down, we're going to talk about how to win government contracts and build wealth from franchising. And we've got 3 great individuals, Orlando Espinoza, Eric Coffey, and Cynthia Alexander, talking about how to win government contracts. And then we'll be talking about wealth from franchising with Ken Brown and Michelle Johnson. Day 14, hey, there's 2 things that every business has to have. This is one of them, sales and revenue. And so Leroy Jones is going to be with us, as well as Orlando Espinoza is going to come back. And we'll be talking about driving sales and optimizing revenue. And if the 2 things that you need in your business is capital and revenue, in order to operate your business, you have to have people. And optimizing your people, productivity, processes for profitability is extremely important. And so we've got 4 different speakers who are going to come in and share with us: Ignacio Segovia, Barbara Mason, Yuslin Poche-Young, and Vaughn Griggs. And so they're from all around the country, just like a lot of our speakers. So we're getting people who are outside of the area. We've got Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, and South Florida represented in this particular panel. And then I'm going to wrap up with how we stay connected to succeed, lead, and prosper, and take advantage of the resources that you've become aware of and engaged with during this period of time. And so at this point, I want to introduce our next speaker, and his name is Carl Sprague. And I am going to get to his... Carl is the president of Sprague Associates, and for the last 20 years, he's been coaching leaders across a wide range of industries, business models, and company sizes. He has more than 11,000 hours of one-on-one meeting time with executives, which has allowed him to witness the good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership, what works and what doesn't, what accelerates a career and what stalls it. More than 300 rising star leaders in 4 different organizations have benefited from his leadership development classes. He's seen what captures their attention, what they apply to their jobs, and what they ignore. He's done over 2,000 behavioral assessments for client companies that's been completed by his organization for hiring purposes, to improve team dynamics, and to enhance communication effectiveness. He has previously spent 12 years as an investment banker, advising middle market clients on a variety of transactions, including acquisitions, sales, divestitures, management buyouts, and leverage recapitalizations. And so the one thing that he didn't talk about here, which I'll mention, and then I'm obviously let him to just kind of share and amplify that, is his role as Vista's chair. And I'll let Carl tell you what Vistage is and what that's about. Carl is going to talk to us about several things. He's going to kind of segue from our conversation and amplify some of the things we talked about as it related to the peer-to-peer. And then he's going to have a potpourri of things that he's going to share with us about getting the proper guidance, using coaches, consultants, and what you need to know and do in order to get the right guidance to grow your business. So I'd also like to say that on a personal note, Carl is a valued friend and mentor for me. And so, anything that I've done well is because Carl told me what to do and I did it. Whatever I screwed up is because Carl told me what to do and I didn't do it. All right, Carl, my friend, go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Hutch. No, and as Hutch said, I got the potpourri of topics because he knows I can't stay on task for any one topic. So I may be a bit all over the board. But having said that, I want to encourage questions because I want it to be relevant to where you are and what you need. They're not to contradict Hutch, but when he said, hopefully with each of these presentations, there's 2 or 3 takeaways. I heard a great expression years ago that I absolutely love. And that's one idea well executed can change your life forever. It is that execution. We get good ideas, put it on our mañana list. I'll try to get around to that. And if you can get a great idea and then go take action to execute, it can make all the difference. There are a couple of acronyms I want to share with you. And this is, I think, important for leaders, important for entrepreneurs. One is OIMF. And OIMF stands for odds in my favor. There's a lot of things that you will be told that you understand intellectually. I should do this. Good leaders do this. The best companies do this. But I don't have time, not today, whatever it is. Prioritizing that, and it is the consistent execution of the little things. It's building those daily habits that give you traction, that build momentum, that really do allow you to be successful. The other acronym is ICA. The I stands for intentionality. Being intentional about what you do, how you do it. There's a lot of things that we develop over time, and they're habits, we get used to it. They've outlived their usefulness. And so sometimes taking the pause, does this still work? Is there a different process? Is there a different voice that I need to hear? So intentionality. The C is clarity. So much time gets wasted in trying to clarify communications. And, when you are an entrepreneur, I mean, it's difficult enough if you're trying to communicate in an organization of 1,000. It's potentially more challenging if there are 3 of you, because if something gets garbled and misunderstood, there's a third of the productivity that's getting lost. People get frustrated. And so the clarity of purpose, clarity of expectations, clarity of communications, all those are important. And then alignment. And that's alignment, whether these are employees, whether these are third party, 1099 people, whether these are part-time, whether they're volunteers, making sure that there is alignment on what's most important, where you're headed, what their role is, and that kind of thing. Another thing that I want to share, and I promise I will get to consultants and coaches and mentors, but some of these things I again, over the last 20 years, dealing with CEOs, companies of all shapes, flavors, and sizes, I think these elements are important. One is the mindset of the entrepreneur. And the success of your organization, the success of your venture, it's your responsibility. There are a million excuses that you will be given by the market, by vendors, by customers, by the economy, by pandemics, whatever it is. Okay, accept that and keep moving forward, because it's those things that can take energy. It can be challenging, but to the extent that you're working with other people, they're looking to you and how do you react to setbacks? If you are prepared to play the blame game, so might they. And so just keep that in mind. The other thing that I think is particularly true for entrepreneurs, to the outside, whether this is employees, family members, people in the community, it looks so easy. And it should be, you know, falling off a log to be successful in your business. How tough can this be? They don't see the sleepless nights. They don't see those customers who aren't paying. They don't see the vendors who don't provide the products or services when you need it. And that's a part of your reality. And I think it's something that having be aware of the little voice in your head, because other people may chirp, you know, I told you this was a mistake, or you shouldn't done this, or you're not right for this. You've got to have strong character and strong commitment. And this is where a community like this, the idea of the peer groups is fantastic, because it's lonely at the top. You know, you can't go to your employees, volunteers, people you work with and say, I have no clue what to do here, and I have to make a decision. What do you think I should do? When it's other entrepreneurs who are going through similar circumstances, it can be a tremendous relief. And for the last 20 years, again, managing 3 different peer groups, I've seen companies be transformed. I've seen lives change. And I strongly encourage you to explore that and participate in that if it seems to fit your budget and if it's the right group. But I think there's real value there. And also with the making sure you quiet the little voices is sometimes you got to quiet those people who are close to you, who are, you know, not necessarily in your corner. So anyway, the other things just, and this is where these outside resources can come in. Part of the role of the entrepreneur is nonstop prioritization. You will have the constraints of 24 hours in the day and 7 days in the week. And you can't have a mindset of just more and more and more. Because at some point, that's activity for activity's sake and the law of diminishing returns. And sometimes the highest priorities or biggest returns, those get neglected. So prioritization, focus. And when you've identified those top priorities, those get laser focused. Because otherwise, you know, whether it is the cell phone or just the demands in the community, there's a million distractions, and execution and getting that the traction around that is really important. And the other is an action orientation. And sometimes you're not sure what to do next. You're not sure about the next step. And you can sit in paralysis, hoping that the, you know, clouds come, God's voice becomes audible, and I, you know, by all means go to prayer for this. But sometimes you have to take that courageous first step. And from that step, again, the traction comes. And to the extent that you have employees and other people that you are working with, they're watching you. The spotlight of leadership is bright. And so sometimes you got to steal up a little bit of confidence that you may not exactly feel. But again, they'll be watching. But sometimes this is where these other resources can come in. And I just want to share my thoughts about some of them, and then I'll go through some ideas on how you can screen them or vet them. But one thing that is a low cost resource for you is to identify your complement. And that is your alter ego. Those strengths that you have, those things that make you successful, the things that you're good at, you love to do, and they bring value to your business. You want to keep doing those. They're why you do what you do and why you've been successful. Unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, there are those other responsibilities you don't like doing, you're not good at, or they don't bring as much value to your business. So who is that complement? Who can you outsource it to? And in some cases, I know in my past, it wasn't necessarily somebody I was delegating it to, but there were people that I trusted that I wanted to know what my blind spots were. I think I'm cruising along and I've got all the bases covered. And I would tell them, I need to know. I can't see my backswing in this game of golf. I need to be told, what am I missing? What are people experiencing when they're being led by me or sold by me that I'm oblivious to? And creating that safe space can be really important. And again, this can be an employee, a friend, or someone that and when you take the pressure off the table of they're not being critical, they're being helpful. You are asking them for these insights, and it can be a big help. And one of the things that determining from mentors to coaches, depending on where you are in your career, where your business is in its kind of life cycle, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you're working hard and wow, this isn't getting the traction I'd hope, or we just seem to be missing a gear. I think generally, depending on where you are, the idea of a mentor can be someone who's been there, done that. To the extent it's in your industry or something nearby, that can be helpful. But sometimes that mentor can be an excellent communicator, an excellent delegator, and just being able to have someone speak into you and provide guidance, insights, advice based on their experience. I distinguish that from coaches, and I don't want to get into definitions and all, but I'll just tell you how I distinguish it. I think very often you go to mentors when you want advice. They have experience and a skill set that you want to tap into. Oftentimes with coaches, they will ask a lot of questions and guide you through more self-discovery. And very often we've got the answers ourselves, but we're a little unsure. We want to get it right. And sometimes as you verbalize the challenge, what the alternatives are, coaches can draw that out of you and serve a useful role. In both cases, I think the litmus test for who you want to work with is early on, you want to develop a level of trust and have there be mutual respect. Because it's one thing when somebody's a mentor, they've got expertise to share, but they maintain that approach of just being the expert the whole time. They're the teacher, you're the student, and all. You're an entrepreneur, you're running a business. They need to understand those dynamics and have to respect what it is you're trying to accomplish. And on that basis, determine how they can be helpful. So it's non-judgmental. In both cases, probably more on the coaching because it's the one I'm most used to. But there's a word that I would like you to add to your vocabulary, and that's carefrontation. Sometimes the emperor or empress needs to be told that he or she aren't wearing any clothes. And you're delusional and you're kidding yourself. But when you know that it's coming from a place of care, they love you. They want you to be successful. They are on your side. And when you trust that, as opposed to, why are they telling me to stop this or go in all that? And if you can't trust it and you take it half measured, they think you're not paying attention, you disrespect them, and things frazzle. And so determining early on, are we on the same page? Are they as invested in your success as you are? And that carefrontation, to this day, and I've got decades on most of you, it's uncomfortable for me to hear it. I don't like conflict. I like being told I'm brilliant and doing things the right way. And then I recognize, no, this is exactly what I needed to hear. There was a brick wall out there that I was going to run into. And it is part of the relationship that I try to build with my clients. As Hutch and Ricardo talked about the peer group, it's part of the nucleus of a group like that where you're not competitors, there's no conflicts of interest. So when they are weighing in with advice, it's because they want you to be successful and hope that you'll weigh in with the same kind of advice with them. So we've got mentors, coaches, the complementary people in our lives, and then consultants. These are when you need specific expertise. And over the years, I have worn a consulting hat. I've hired plenty of consultants. It's a little bit like people who are coaches. It's a broad definition, can mean a lot of things. And so I think with consultants, the ability to be very specific, to outline the scope of what it is you need from them, because then you can focus on the process which they can deliver that and their background and expertise and your comfort level that you've got the right person. So outlining the scope, determining the desired outcome. And one thing to be careful of, and this is, the mistakes that I made over the years. Sometimes I was dazzled by someone's knowledge of a process, something in my industry, some skill set. And I realized at the end of the day, they just had 10% more knowledge than I did. And they packaged it in a slick manner. And pretty early on, I realized I was wasting money and time. And sometimes time is more precious than the dollars that you spend. And so considering the projects, how you evaluate, how they evaluate it, how they make recommendations. And sometimes you can do that project as a test case or kick the tires a bit. Rather than hiring them for the full scope, let me hire them for a specific defined process that's got a beginning and an end, a project that's got a beginning and an end. You can see how the chemistry goes, how they delivered, what the value proposition, such that if that goes well, okay, let's expand this and go all in. And that way you don't get married unless you're pretty sure that you're going to get the results. The other thing that to explore, there are local consultants, industry consultants, there are also the virtual resources like Upwork and Fiverr, where, I've had websites designed, business cards designed for pennies, really, in a short amount of time. And so there are resources. One thing that I would have you consider, and I'll pledge that as I identify resources, I'll share them with you. But I think one thing that is going to be helpful to most small businesses in the not too distant future is the AI consultant. How can you leverage AI to be more productive, more efficient, more professional, without wasting money, without, and I've done the brain damage of exploring dozens of AI apps, testing them, and then realizing, okay, I am the blind leading the blind myself. Let me hire an expert to guide me through this and help me make those decisions. I do want to talk briefly about peer groups, because there's an expression, none of us is as smart as all of us. And if you've got a group with diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, different risk profiles, different behavioral profiles, people will view the world very differently. And the expression I've heard, it's like shining a flashlight on a beach ball. If everybody looks at the world the way you do, all beach balls are orange and green. But if you've got different perspectives around that room, no, they're yellow and white and blue. And when you are making significant decisions or facing significant challenges, having that collective wisdom weigh in, and sometimes it's with completely opposing bits of advice, but it allows you to make an informed business decision. So I do think there are industry groups, there are mastermind groups within an industry, there are peer groups with diverse backgrounds, and finding that group that really resonates and works for you. Give me 1 second. There's another resource, and I'm not going to put Hutch on the spot with this one, but there are also those master connectors. And, I know for myself, while coaching is my day job, I spend an awful lot of time just trying to connect people. I know Hutch excels at that. And identifying those people that you don't want to abuse the relationship, you want to provide them value as well. But part of what gets me going and gets the juices flowing, gets me up out of bed in the morning, is the ability to connect people. And so part of what you want to have in your arsenal beyond that complement, the mentor or coach, the availability of someone, consultants as you need them for specific tasks, and the peer group to tap into, is identifying in the community those master connectors, because you never know when that one need arises that it can send you off on a hunt for days or weeks looking for the right resource. And sometimes those connectors, oh, I know a woman that excels at that. Call her, and it's done. So a couple of things I want to throw at you with, if you are vetting consultants, if you are vetting coaches, speaking to their clients and members and asking for existing ones and prior ones that they've worked with. Because everybody who's in the consulting game, the coaching game, they're prepared for their top 2 referrals. It's the 3rd referral. It's the 4th referral. where you can really find out. And so identify how long have they worked together? What were the outcomes? And not just general outcomes. Sometimes I would ask, what are 3 specific outcomes that were achieved as a result of working with this particular consultant or coach? What have they been disappointed in the relationship, or what was different other than what they expected when they hired them? And stay silent. Don't give them the escape. There will be something in there, and that can be helpful. I would ask the consultant, the coach, to define their ideal client and ideal client relationship. Because sometimes you can determine, I fit that to a T. Sometimes it's, well, that sounds very generic. Let me ask more questions and get some details around that. And sometimes you can say, wow, I don't fit that at all. And you can save a lot of time and energy. As you interact with them, do they listen? Do they spend the time and suck the air out of the room telling you how good they are, why you need to hire them and all that? Or do they ask questions about you? What makes you tick? What's important to you? What's important to your business? And then do they actually listen? How long are their engagements? And this is one that I got schooled by somebody who was a coach, where he had a phenomenal reputation. And so I said, I want to learn. I want to get better. I said, what's the average length of a client relationship? And he said, Carl, there's no average to it. It's 8 months. It's like, really? Not 2 years, 5 years? He said, no, it's 8 months. And he had a process where he taught them about identifying blind spots, getting feedback from their teams and all this. And he said, if I haven't taught them how to be self-sufficient in that 8-month period, I have failed, which got my attention. Many of my coaching clients are much longer than that. I haven't mastered that, but you can get an idea if someone is sizing you up as their annuity, or there's a defined beginning and an end. Let's measure it, and then we can mutually determine, do we want this to continue on the other side of this? Do you learn anything from them beyond how good they are, how smart they are, the track record they are? But in the first hour of meeting them, did you learn something? If they can make observations about your business, your role, your blind spots, needs, or what they know about companies like yours, what they know about your industry, where you can check that box to say, either they've done a ton of homework about me and my company, or they've got the experience that I really do want to tap into. Do they understand your business? And have they made an effort to understand you? And again, that comes to asking questions and focused questions, because a lot of times too much time and energy is spent on them selling you on why you should hire them, and not enough time gets spent on them really understanding the scope, the need, and the fit around this. And to carry that to the previous, or when we started this session, that question about exit strategies, that, making sure that the questions get answered and the understanding is there becomes really important. One last thing that I will say about hiring outside people and having people who can speak truth into you. There is a life cycle to a business that's true of all businesses. And you start out in infancy, it's all about sales. You're just trying to ring the cash register. you know, making money and margin is secondary to getting customers, getting cash flow, bringing that in. Well, then there's only 24 hours in the day. You need to hire some people, outsource some things. You need to put some process in place, and so as that builds, then you begin to really get traction, you get profitable, and there will be a tension between new ideas, new opportunities, the right processes, making sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And sometimes it's at that point that the founder has difficulty giving up. But this is what I've done. This is what I'm good at. So delegating, turning things over to someone else, sometimes stepping out of the way as CEO, but just understand that that is something that, whether it's coaches, that complementary person, when there's trust, when they understand you, when the relationship is built, that can be one of those conversations that can be incredibly healthy, that allows you to manage with eyes wide open, plan for the future, determine exit potential, and all of that. So before I get hoarse, let me stop, open it up for any questions, and anywhere you'd like me to go any deeper or answer any questions.
All right, that was very good stuff, as always expected from you, Carl. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for questions.
Wow, Carl, that's amazing. Everything you said, make me really think. Especially the part about the difference between a coach and a mentor. I've worked in the federal government for over 32 years, and I've had coaches and I've had mentors. The mentors that I've had, they were actually in the same field that I was in. So it was easy to say, yes, I can follow that person's footstep. After I retired from the federal government, my business now is in a total different industry. It's in dinner cruises, it's in party boats, it's in weddings, it's in bar mitzvahs. So it's totally different than what I worked in the federal government. I feel like I'm lonely. It's lonely at the top where I am. There are not a lot of people that look like me in my business. The majority look like you in my business. And it's very, 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 very difficult to get a mentor. And most of them see me as not a partner, as a threat, because I'm moving into that industry. So the question to you is, how do you get a mentor? Does it need to be in that same space or what?
Not necessarily, but having said that, I do have somebody in mind for you that runs several successful businesses like yours, just in another market. And I think, I don't know him personally, but we've got a mutual friend who's very close to him. And, there may be the prospects of finding a mentor from that industry, either him or someone like him. So, it does require some potential exploration and, seeking introductions like this, but let's start there and see where that goes. And then potentially looking elsewhere.
I totally appreciate that start, because like I said, for me, it's been 13 years of being lonely at this top, and it's not easy. Yeah.
No, and that
Thank
is
you.
something I give you credit for continuing to push, because when there's a purpose and when there's a dream that drives you, it allows you to address those lonely at the top days when, you're looking for support and the only place you find it is in the mirror. And that's tough.
Yes,
That's tough.
yes, yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And we talked about that a little earlier about being lonely in the, in a crowded room, right? So that's really good stuff. I did just launch another poll for some feedback, and there'll be one more poll that will just be for the overall session altogether. But I appreciate we got 70% participation in the first one, so we're going to drive for 80% on this one. And but any other questions, comments? I've got a question for Carl. Carl, how would you define the difference between a coach and a consultant?
No, I think a consultant is hired for a specific task project. There is a scope to the work. The coach relationship is one about, growth and learning and accountability that, in both cases, you can set the hoped for outcomes from the relationship. But generally with the consultant, it's more contractual and more specific about what it is you are
Right.
hiring them to provide. And, I know sometimes with coaching clients, the sessions that I have will be different depending on the individual, what's going on in their world, the market conditions or whatever it is. If I am being hired as a consultant to, launch a project, create a product, deliver a service, that's pretty well defined, and I know not to step outside those bounds. But
Yeah.
I do think, Hutch, that the idea of having the conversation up front about what do you expect from the relationship, or what do you expect from that assignment, that applies to both. It's just that the answers are sometimes a little more far-reaching or a little more nebulous sometimes with the coaching relationship.
Understood. As we look at peer-to-peer groups, and you've been involved in the peer-to-peer space for quite a long time, and you mentioned something earlier about having a clear expectation about what the profile and expectations should be for people who come into the group. So if that was enough to kind of trigger what you said to me earlier when we went on break, I'd like for you to share that with the group.
Well, this is a bias I have. So this doesn't apply to all peer groups, but I think some important attributes of people who participate in a peer group. One is lifelong learners. When people want to get better today than they were yesterday and learn things with the hopes that they can be even better tomorrow, there's a sense of urgency around learning and a willingness to be open to ideas and different perspectives. So that's one. The other thing is there is no shortage. If you create a quality peer group, there's no shortage of people out in the market who would benefit from being in that peer group. But you've got to have the discipline to say what we want are people who can get value and people who can bring value. And so the litmus test, and I mean, one of the questions that I ask people that I'm recruiting is, I will get a sense for what value I think they can bring, but I'll ask them to verbalize, as you come into the group, what value do you believe you bring to the table? And as a group forms and evolves, I'm going to date myself with this reference, so bear with me, but there will be a couple of E.F. Huttons. And back in the day in the commercials, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. there will be people that have a little bit more experience, a little bit more discernment, maybe have been through the wars a bit, that provide value to others. You want to make sure as you bring people into the group and into the room that they look forward to those additions and they don't say, oh, wow, this is going to be a net drain for me. And sometimes it's not necessarily that the people you're bringing in have extraordinary backgrounds or histories. Sometimes it is they are willing to be vulnerable, they are willing to listen to feedback, and they're willing to execute. Because like at this point in my career, that's very gratifying when there's somebody maybe inexperienced, but they want to learn, they want to do it right. They're willing to ask questions, and then they're willing to go execute. And when that happens, it can be a powerful dynamic. But I think on balance, you want a good mix of experience and skill sets, different backgrounds, again, different styles of leadership, but people who can are seeking to improve, but people who also want to help others improve. Because when that happens, the discussions, there's a little bit more energy. People are looking to apply what they learn. They're willing to be held accountable to execute on things they promised to do. And when that happens, it's powerful. And you see changes and improvement, right before your very eyes. So I'm very supportive of what you guys are putting together. And as people are able, I'd encourage them to take advantage of that.
Got it. Quick question though, not though, but a quick question. What do you think is maybe the ideal time frame for a peer-to-peer group meeting in terms of how long?
It depends a bit, Hutch, on the agenda. I mean, my groups meet for a full day. I mean, it's 8:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. But with that, I mean, that involves speakers and some other things that are built into the way we conduct business. I think half days work as well, and if part of the focus, and it depends, is the peer group focused on education and learning? Is the peer group focused on bringing challenges, opportunities, sharing best practices, providing advice to one another? And then in that case, if that's the focus, a half day is probably appropriate, because at some point you get exhausted. If people are bringing meaty situations and you're trying to understand them before you provide advice. So, I think both work. I also have full day meetings with no speakers where we'll do a deep dive on topics and really share best practices. So I think both work. I would avoid the 90 minutes. People, it allows them to, come late, leave early, and wow, we're only here for an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, I think I can miss next month. You really want people to commit to one another such that they feel comfortable, they're getting value. And anybody can, have a clunker of a meeting 1 month, but the next month, if there's no value, by the 3rd month, they're looking elsewhere. If it's and again, it's part of that value proposition of quality people in the room who want to learn and get better. And when that's the case, it's, spontaneous combustion. Things just happen, and there's energy, there's ideas, and then it's like I say, it's a cool dynamic.
Yeah, I think the idea at the beginning, it was more what you said on the second half to be able to bring a team that we can focus on sort of resolving greatest challenges that are going on, right? And allowed, obviously, a manageable time so people can hopefully get an understanding up front of sort of what the issues are, so we can at least have a general understanding, but manage the agenda in a way that people can express themselves and at the same time being able to have that diverse exchange, right? So, and obviously, a focused agenda, but so half a day back, because I think to your point, once you go beyond a half a day, I mean, your energy level and the level of distraction is really not the same. So I guess what I was thinking, Hutch, is keeping it to at least a half a day. And if
Yeah.
eventually you want to bring different agendas, different speakers, obviously at that point we could extend it.
Yeah, Ricardo, as far as that goes, I think that if people are running businesses, they're entrepreneurs, whatever the cost is for this, the most significant cost is their time.
Yeah.
And a full day is expensive, and so the idea of a half day probably makes sense. But then the idea as well, if people are conditioned to come prepared,
Yeah.
here is my issue for today. Here is the advice I'm seeking. Here's the relevant information. Open it up for questions. Then it's focused. And if people come in with the idea of, I am going to get input on my issue, you almost guarantee a value proposition for them for the day, as opposed to, I got nothing today. Maybe I can learn something. And then it's more entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's a little dangerous. And you should have such problems as, we have 12 people, everybody's got a significant issue, and we ran out of time. And so at the beginning of the meeting, you need to prioritize who's got the A level urgent issue and kind of prioritize.
Well, that's actually part of the session that we're having prepping, is to understand the who and their profile, their characters, because I think that's going to help the facilitation of the meeting of who is who, right?
Sure.
And because that's the key, right? You could have somebody just take so much time. So, but I think understanding those questions up front, because the idea is that everybody comes out with value, right?
Yeah.
Understanding those things up front and doing that due diligence, Hutch, is really key, right? To make it flow.
Agreed. All right,
I got a
guys.
question. I got a quick question, Hutch. How much similarity would you suggest there be between the participants in the peer group on an industry level versus a role in the particular firm that they're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is something that kind of needs to be decided on the front end. What I have found is if there's a potential for conflict of interest because people are in the same industry and you have that massive problem that you want advice from your peers, well, I can't admit, the embezzlement problem or the challenge I have with this customer. I need to be quiet. Well, then you're not getting the value out of the group that you perhaps could and should. And so I think it's okay sometimes when there's ancillary businesses, you don't really compete directly, but you're in the same general space. Sometimes that's healthy because then they understand your world and some of the dynamics of it. But when it's a similar size company or similar company in terms of industry, client base, when everything is great, yeah, they understand you speak the same language. But sometimes the greatest value you can get is when there's a challenge, when there's a problem. And I think that's something that I would probably recommend that you avoid the conflict of interest so that you can share anything in that group, never worry about conflict or why somebody's giving you that advice. Ray, go all in on this, push all your chips into the table, and you think, wait a minute, why are they saying this? When there's not a conflict of interest, they're only saying that because they think it's in your best interest and they're giving you the advice. Does that make sense?
It does. I just wonder about the value to the participants when there's very diverse people in your peer group that are experiencing challenges that are not even close to yours. So, or can't really give you the advice that you're really looking for because they're, you know, in a totally different industry. So, what, balancing that, I have a concern about.
Well, that's something I will leave to Ricardo and Hutch. But the one thing that I have found in, like, I've got groups in one case, 8 employees, less than 2 million in revenues. That person is sitting next to somebody doing $1.5 billion with 11,000 employees. It's managing people, it's prioritization, it's communication, it's the highest and best use of their time, and some similarities. And so that's where the bandwidth of the people in the room, their ability to connect dots so that they can distill down what it is you're going through, what the challenge is. If it is completely specific to your industry, then yeah, that diverse group may be a weakness.
I'd like to just add to that. Obviously, when you have that disparity between that level of experience you mentioned, it's obviously that the person with, this kind of experience may not get really, it's not going to get the value that probably the rest of the people will. But I wouldn't be as discouraged. This is something very specific to your industry, but the whole idea of bringing people from operations, from marketing, from branding, that even though the business may be different, but there are similarities in certain things in those functions. And the idea is to really, that's the beauty about all the industry, that you can learn some of the things that you may not have thought of. All right. So, but I think if it's something extremely specific, very technologically related to you, I don't know exactly what you're referring to, there may be a gap. But what you will find when you have different industries, different perspectives, there's a lot of similarities in the challenges that happen in those spaces too.
Ricardo, the other thing that does occur is also people have relationships potentially with people in your industry. They're the service providers that they are working with. They're not clients of yours, and the ability to make those introductions are available.
Well, all right, everybody. This has been a phenomenal session. I want to thank Ricardo Molina, Carl Sprague. Great job, guys. We really appreciate you. And thank you for your time and effort that you put into delivering some really valuable information. Everybody wants to stay in contact with you, so I'm glad you put your contact information in the chat. For those of you who've not gotten the contact information out of the chat, we're going to leave it open here for a couple of minutes as we wrap up and close. We do have our next session, and we've got one of our speakers with us, Dr. Dion Roundtree, coming up for next Saturday. You want to tell us anything that we need to be prepared for on Saturday, Dion?
Just be open to the Holy Spirit.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Good deal. And also should tell you
That's
guys,
the way to tee up a presentation. I'm telling you.
You can't match that. You can't match that.
Well, I won't put Carl on the spot. He knows what I'm saying. It's just Dion just teed up with be ready for the Holy Spirit. But I will tell you guys, Carl is speaking tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. At the Faith Works Friday. And so I know there's some Faith Work Friday attendees here. And if Carl, you want to say something, be more than happy to share something with us. And we're really ready to wrap up, and I really appreciate your time. And if you missed dinner, go get it. Well, matter of fact, skip dinner tonight. We all could probably lose a couple of pounds. So I think I'm gonna lose some weight during the Jumpstart. It's 2 nights a week I don't do dinner, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Oh boy. So thank you guys for being here. And Carl, you want to have the last word? I don't know if you wanted to say anything after I kind of threw it out over to Dion about Saturday. If you want.
Well, let me say 2 things. Number one, I want to congratulate you all for spending the time to do this, to listen, to attempt to learn, grow, and get better. And as part of that, I will, hold myself out to, if I can help in any way, making introductions, or, you want to bounce something off me, please do. This, for many of us, is an important weekend as we come up to Easter weekend. And I do hope that everyone has a blessed weekend. And there's so much that goes into who we are that we get reminded of this weekend. And so for you, your families, your loved ones, I just pray that it will be a blessed weekend, full of love, and a reminder for what was done on our behalf. So God bless you all.
All right.
And Carl, I will be in
Thank
touch with
you.
you on tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, good.
All right,
Look
thanks.
forward to it.
Appreciate you. Good night.
Ricardo, we're giving you
Good
the last
night.
word, Ricardo.
What was that?
Giving you the last word, Ricardo.
No, listen, I first of all, I just want to thank you. I think I just want to make sure that everybody here really understands of the tremendous opportunity that you have in this group with ICABA. I've been part of a lot of groups, and I can tell you as much as other groups may be bigger, but I think the level of value that ICABA is producing for the rest of the organization is tremendously. So I really encourage everybody here to maximize the value that this team has and the talent that is in this team alone, because it's really exponential. So with that, I thank you guys. Take care. Happy Easter. God bless you all.
All right.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Take care.
Good night, guys.
Level up your success with the ICABA World Network, where accomplished Black professionals and entrepreneurs have created a thriving global ecosystem built from valuable connections and impactful collaborations. Be a part of a trusted network that uplifts, inspires, and enhances your success. Join like-minded and leading Black professionals to foster meaningful relationships, unlock opportunities, and access the resources you need to thrive in your career, business, and life. Go to ICABAWorldNetwork.com and join today.